Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media, 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Justin Thomas, who's the sports editor for our Denton County papers, as well as Brian Murphy, sports editor for our papers in Frisco, and Celina. And gentlemen, let's talk some baseball playoffs. Let's talk some softball playoffs. We're recording this on Wednesday, so the next batch of playoff games for high school baseball and softball are going to get going on Thursday. We are in the third round, the regional quarterfinal round of softball, area round for baseball. We've got, I guess, overall, we have 11 teams left between classes 5A and 6A. So we're going to focus on, a few of the more high-profile matchups, and then quick hit some of the others. But we're going to try to touch on every team that we still have left in the postseason. Let's, Justin, let's start on softball with a juicy little regional quarterfinal between a couple teams right in our necks of the woods. Two teams that were ranked in the top 25 of the state polls for most of the season. Plano Senior and Flower Mound, and there was a nice little wrinkle thrown into this one from a scheduling standpoint because we're going to get a one-game series. You don't get too many one-game series once you get past the second round. It feels like the further you get, the more you're going to have just best of three. Let's settle at best of three. But no, we're going to get a winner-take-all one-game playoff between Plano and Flower Mound. That game is set for 7 o'clock Friday out at Frisco Lone Star. I think that's with that fascinating wrinkle. I'm not really sure who if one team has an advantage over the other under the one game pretense, because it does seem like, at least on paper, Justin, that these two teams are very, very similar.
Yeah, it's a little different in the baseball as opposed to a softball series where it's typically most teams throw the same pitcher all games anyway. So. Flower Mound certainly has a workhorse in Caitlin Sadler. She pitched 9 innings in Flower Mound's extra inning win on Friday out in blanking on the city. Oh yeah, somewhere out there. Not in the Metroplex. Cleburne, there you go.
Cleburne, there you go. They don't count.
But yeah, she threw all 9, so she'll be ready to go in this one. But yeah, like you said, she'll only be needed for one game, and I don't know. Flower Mound's got to be feeling pretty hot right now after that huge comeback win they had.
Their confidence has to be through the roof, and that is as you just look at some of the different kind of plot lines for this. On paper, these two teams are very similar in their makeup. They're both, very balanced, prolific offenses up and down the lineup. Plano comes into this one averaging just a shade under 8.5 runs per game since the start of district play. Flower Mound is at 7.6 under that same structure. Both teams have already had to win a game 3 already during the playoffs. Flower Mound had to do it second round against Midway. Plano had to do it in the first round against Marcus. So they are at least comfortable with having to play a game with their backs up against the wall. So should at least make the stakes of a one-game series a bit more manageable, since they've already been through a situation like that once. This Flower Mound team, with just the resolve that they've shown late in games, if you're Plano, it just means that you got to be on edge every step of the way, because it feels like after what they did last week against Midway, that no lead is going to be safe against this Flower Mound team.
Yeah, and they've had a knack for pulling out the close wins. I saw them beat Hebron, a playoff team, in extra innings. They beat a Marcus team in their last at bat with a big homer, I believe, and then obviously what they did with their comeback on Friday night.
And they've already done so against two pretty quality teams. Allen was certainly one of the better, hotter teams at the very least, coming out of District 6A, a team that had put together some nice miracle finishes of its own. And I got to see game 1 of that series, and I was just floored by just how like I've already mentioned, just how balanced and just how overwhelming every pore of that Flower Mound lineup was. There really wasn't a spot where you could just kind of catch your breath and can maybe take it easy with these next few at bats. It was constant pressure, and I had not seen a team take it to them like that all season. I saw Plano, but Plano, what Plano does is Plano really thrives off of the big inning, and it's a huge inning when it happens. There's just, you're kind of powerless when you're when they blitz you with a 7-run first inning, and there's just there's no coming back from it. Whereas with Flower Mound, it was just a consistent 3 runs, 2 runs, 3. It was just a consistent just outpouring I'm fascinated though coming in. Like it looks like, at least on paper, Flower Mound teams have gotten on base against Flower Mound.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, I was checking. They've given up about 8.5 hits per game.
Yeah.
But having only allowed, let's see, what was it? It's only 4.5 runs per game.
Yeah.
So you can see the defense is there. Teams are getting on base against them, but Flower Mound's. You mentioned Caitlin Sadler. She's really doing a good job of working out of gyms and just not letting minimizing that damage.
And getting those hits is. You got to work for them against Flower Mound because they're not going to give you much. They're a very sound defensive team, and you talk about kind of the runs they give up and versus the hits they allow, and I think part of that is that defense. And just traditionally, all the softball teams I've covered, I don't think any team. I would guess that no team in the Metroplex has turned more double plays over the past 5 or 6 years since I've covered Flower Mound than the Lady Jaguars do. They're very sound. They make the routine play, but they also make the tough play, and that really helps them out a lot there.
One thing with Plano that I think is kind of paramount, just kind of looking at the trajectory of their season, is I think Plano needs a good start in this game. Yeah. They need to come off to a hot start. It's kind of, if you just want to go off trends, the only game that they've lost all postseason was that first game of their bi-district series against Marcus, and it was a game where Marcus was the one that pounced first. They scored 4 runs in the top of the first inning, and then just built off of that for a 9-2 victory. Yeah. But then Plano comes right back in game 2, and I think it was 7 runs or something they scored in the first inning. And then it's Plano's a team that they really do feed off of momentum when they're rolling well from the plate. When their starting pitcher Bronte Road, when she's dialed in the circle, that team just in general really feeds off of just positive momentum. Whereas you have a team like Flower Mound, which has shown that I think they can win in a variety of ways. Like I said, after that Waco Midway comeback, no lead is safe against it's like a team of zombies. Zombie Lady Jaguars, and so I think at least in Plano's case that they're going to have to especially in a win or go home setting. The earlier you can establish momentum in that game, being the first team to establish momentum, I think that's that they need that to kind of benefit their chances versus a team like Flower Mound, or if they get up on you big, it could be because the last time this happened to them was against Marcus, and on the one case Plano was able to eventually figure it out against Marcus and win the next 2 games of that series, but it took more than a game to do so because they're only able to scratch
that luxury this week. So
they're only able to scratch across 2 runs in that game 1, and then it looked like a completely different team in their second go around against Marcus's starter Lexi Benson. You're not afforded that cushion, so I think for Plano you need a strong start on Friday.
Another thing I want to mention for Flower Mound is obviously they're pretty excited after the win. Get back to the 3rd round after losing in the bi-district round each of the past 2 years, but this has kind of been kind of the point where things have kind of hit the skids for them in the past. They made the 3rd round 4 times in a 5-year stretch from 2010 to 2015, but they only made it past the 3rd round 1 of those times, and a couple of them were pretty heartbreaking losses, I recall, one to Plano East in particular. But
that was one with the really controversial play at the play, wasn't it? I remember that game.
So they're trying to get to the regional semifinals for the 3rd time. They did it in 08 and 14, but they've gotten to this point plenty of times, but haven't often got through it to the next round. So we'll see if they can kind of break that little streak there.
Kind of under that same pretense, this is Plano's first trip to the 3rd round since 2014. Like Flower Mound, it was the 2nd round that was kind of the stumbling block. I've talked plenty on the podcast about some of the heartbreaking finishes they had these last couple years in that 2nd round. They would be trying to get, though, to the regional semifinals. They had a nice run there where they made it to the 4th round in 2010, 11, and 13. Haven't been back since those, so we'll see. Obviously, someone's going 4 rounds deep, so we shall see. Let's shift gears to you, Brian. Let's look at what's up, buddy? How you doing? Let's look at one of the key series in your neck of the woods. Frisco Reedy looking to build off a tremendous 3-game series win against Lake Dallas against a quality Forney team.
That's another team, Reedy, that has to start off hot because against Lake Dallas in Game 3 they did not start off hot. Luckily they were able to get runs late, but they're facing a much better pitching staff this time around. Mason Englert and Jonathan Childress, 2 Texas A&M signees. They're awesome. Probably the best. I was writing up my preview earlier today. Probably the best 1-2 starting pitching duo in the state. I'm no discredit to any of the South Texas or Houston schools or whatnot, but just based off here in the Metroplex, like what's a better starting one?
When one of your pitchers has thrown 55 consecutive scoreless innings, that's a pretty impressive trump card. With all due respect to the rest of Texas.
Last Wednesday, a week ago today, he tied David Clyde's 45-year-old record of 55 consecutive scoreless innings pitched. 45-year-old record. It's pretty crazy, and that guy ended up being drafted by the Rangers. like a couple months later. Yeah. So, and he started for the Rangers, or he made the team as an 18-year-old. So that's just kind of the company that he's in. So Reedy, they're going to have to break that streak if they want to have any success against Forney, because they're going to have to steal one of those games, either against Childress or against Englert, if they want to have any chance to win this game, or this series, I should say. For just for the record, as far as what the dates are for that series, that'll be a best-of-3 series. All the games are going to be at Jesuit. Friday, 7:30 for Game 1, and then Game 2 is going to be Saturday at 1 o'clock. Let's see then. All right, then let's swing back to you, Justin. Looking at Coppell softball. Coppell softball bound for the 3rd round in the regional quarterfinals. They have a series going up against a team that, well, none of us have any clue about because they're based nowhere close here. It's Conroe Oak Ridge.
Yes.
Some initial impressions on that series, JT?
Well, Coppell's back in the 3rd round for the first time since 2008, so congrats to them. And they're playing an Oak Ridge team that actually eliminated the Cowgirls in the 2nd round last year. So
so there's some bad blood in this one.
These teams hate each other. But yeah, just to set things up, another, as we often see in these rounds, especially in Region 2, some travel involved. Game 1 is going to be 7 p.m. Friday at Corsicana, and Game 2 will be at 1 p.m. Saturday out in Madisonville.
That's the rare 2 different neutral sites. That's in 3 series. Where is Madisonville?
It's in Texas.
I hope so.
I'm not sure, to be honest, but yeah, Game 2. 1 p.m. Saturday at Madisonville, with Game 3 following if necessary. Oak Ridge, though, yeah, like you said, we don't know a whole lot about them, but I do know they beat a Sachse team that finished 1st place in its district last week in the area round, and they won each of their first 2 series in 2 games. So 4-0 in the playoffs so far. They beat Coppell, as I said, last year, but Coppell did get 1 game in that 3-game series last year, so they hung with them last year. And a little more experience this year. Nora Rodriguez doing a great job in the circle, shutting down Lufkin in a 2-1 win, in the area around last week. And I guess another little note for Coppell, this is their first actual series. Each of their first 2 rounds were both 1-game series, so the first time they'll get to play a best-of-3 in the playoffs. So
interesting.
See how they respond to that.
So then, that's a look at 3 of, I guess, the more marquee series that we'll be covering. Going to pick up on the rest of the playoffs in a moment, but for the Fast Forward Rewind Student Athlete Spotlight, we're going to shift gears. We're actually going to be going very spring football intensive the rest of the way, talking about some of the top football prospects in the Metroplex. For this first one, Kendrick Johnson was out at Hebron, speaking with one of their standout defensive backs, Darius Snow, on just his progression through the offseason and how the Hawks are coming along. Here's what he had to say.
Kendrick Johnson with another Fast Forward Rewind. This time we at Hebron High with rising sophomore Darius Snow. How's it feel to get all this tension and accomplish what you accomplished over the last year?
It's a blessing. I'm thankful for it. I know that it's something that I'm gonna have to keep working on. I can't get hot-headed. I gotta stay humble and then just do it from there.
What made you even come out for football? We know you got basketball in your genes. Well, so what made you even come out for football last year? And is it a surprise you getting all these offers in just 1 year? Like some people have been working their whole career, and you did us all in 1 year.
A lot of it's size, a lot of it's heritage. Like only football player. Obviously, my family is. And that's what you should think about. I just went out and played. Like I didn't really do nothing special. I just went out and did everything I knew I could.
How cool is it to have a dad that's been in the league and that's professional? I know it's another sport, but he's still been a professional, and you've been around professional athletes.
It's great, and I mean, he definitely spins back some experience. Spins back some experience of his own. Take, for instance, recruiting-wise, he helps me a lot with it because I've been through everything. So that's definitely a plus.
Do you feel any pressure to have a big junior season with so many people? Like you can't burst on the scene this year. People know who Darius Snow is, and you're getting all these recruits, and your team. I've been in the playoffs like 6 years in a row. So how much are you doing all that pressure for next year?
I'm just going to the same way I did last year. I'm more hungry, and then hopefully we can do something we did last year. But it's a team effort. So
how's spring ball going for you?
It's going good. We got a lot of youth. Trying to become from the learner to the leader transition right now. So right now I think it's going pretty good.
What's your goals for next year, personally and team-wise?
Team-wise, I'd like to make it to the playoffs first, and then we'll build from there. And then personally, I'd like to build off what I did last year. Last year I had 136 tackles. Try to get 140.
So far, who would say, not to get you put your list out there, who would you say is your top 3 so far?
I don't really have one, you know, because there's some schools that, like, I visited Texas, I visited TCU, Baylor, schools like that. But there's some schools like Alabama, Stanford, Michigan State that I want to get out to. So I don't want to roll some schools over them because I haven't been able to get out to those schools.
How much do you feel like every day when you go to practice you got to live up to the BTW, Mondo? And give our viewers some insight. What does BTW mean here at Hebron?
Bring the wood. You gotta hit hard, basically. Just give everything you got, the effort. And one thing that I pride myself in is hitting people hard. So it's definitely something that I take pride in.
The fact that you're just a competitor all around, how much is the way your basketball season ends? I know it's another sport. How much does that kind of sting kind of motivate you to do even better on the football field? The fact that y'all were in that competitive game against McKinney and things didn't go your way.
You know, it's stuff like that happens. You know, it was a bad call. There was bad calls. I mean, we could have done things better. But at the end of the day, it was a loss. It's a bad way to lose.
I think so.
So we gotta. I take that to the football and just get better.
So talk about the team camaraderie. I see y'all run sprints and everything. And my day in practice, seemed like y'all got a good team closeness here at Hebron.
Yeah, that's with conditioning for sure. Definitely get better from it. I know that during the season, it'll definitely have us more in shape. Playing those faster backs, more agile backs. So it's a plus. It's hard, but it's a plus.
How about y'all togetherness? Your team saying y'all close bond. Everybody's joking around, and it's a loose atmosphere. It's like everybody get along.
Yeah, a lot of them are my age now. Last year I was the youngest on the team. A lot of seniors. So now with a lot of me and my age, we get along together. We get along well. And it's definitely a positive when it comes time to play during the season.
Are you excited to be looked up as a leader instead of being the kid like you were this time last year?
I am, for sure. But I can't take too much pride in it. I'm just going to be on both.
So I know you're going to a lot of camps and stuff over the summertime. What are you doing to improve your game so that on Friday nights we see a new layer of Darius Snow when the lights are on?
Tackling is something that I've definitely been to an elite level, or not necessarily elite, but I've been good at it, and I'm trying to always improve. But coverage-wise, it's something that I know I can do a lot better on. And I've been getting better on it. I have to work on this during camp.
For somebody who hasn't seen you play, give us a 30, 45 second scouting report on Darius Snow, the football player.
Big, fast, and scary. I'm the guy that'll come down and make a hit on the line hard, and I'm also the guy that'll cover the best receiver if I have to. So, especially in pads, big, fast, and scary.
So what we say we might see you like in a Roquan Swift type of role next year?
I'd say more of like a Cam Thompson or a Derwin James type of role.
Oh, so you're going to be in and out the box and in the slot. Give some insight to the fact that you're getting this attention, but it seems like your teammates are embracing it. Sometimes people get jealous and stuff. I don't see that. So a lot of people, they're excited for you, and every offer you get, it's like they got an offer.
Yeah, you know, I don't think a lot of my teammates are friends, so I don't think they get jealous or anything like that. In fact, I think me having attention, guys like me, Tracy, having a bunch of attention, they definitely would make them want to play better because the coach is going to come, and then they can have a great day, get on the coach's boards, and they realize that, so they don't become jealous at all. They're just enjoying it as I am.
Give some insight to the foundation y'all laid in this spring, because y'all guys are working hard out there in this 95-degree heat.
We do whatever it takes to get better, and we got 18 practices this month. I think today was our 6th, so a third of it's done, and we know that we can definitely build from here, but I feel that we've made some good progress so far.
Are you excited with redistricting? Y'all playing people y'all didn't play this year? It's going to be like something new.
I am. There are guys at schools like Coppell, like Jonathan McGill, play 7-on-7 with him, so guys like that I'll be able to play against. That'll be fun, and definitely fun to get a new chance of scenery in terms of the season.
Give some insight to some of the guys that you're cool with, because it seems like y'all 2019, 2020 guys have some deep bonds. Like, you said your friends were Play Wide, and who else?
Jonathan McGill, Chris Thompson at Duncanville, a bunch of guys really, DJ Brown, Keller Central, but I mean, it's just a network, you know. Cold people know cold people. I like to say it like that. So,
it's a competitor between y'all. Do y'all set personal goals and try to go out and do it on Friday night?
Exactly. And we can be the best of friends off the field, but when we do play on the field, we're enemies. So we're definitely all competitors, and I love that.
So you see one of them on the field, will you be scared to hit him?
I'm not scared of nobody. I hit anybody.
But where's this quiet confidence guy? Like you got your nice little swag. It's not cocky or nothing, but everybody definitely knows. So I just watched within 2 minutes. I hadn't seen you play. Like, okay, that's Darius Snow. You slid out real quick. Where does that come from?
You know, it's definitely like it's a confidence thing. Like a lot of people, you come off as cocky to some, but I consider it confidence. I consider it confidence. I go out trying to be the best me, and that can be better than a lot of people would think. So that's definitely what I go out and do every day.
It's been out to your coach, your relationship with your coach, saying he's a close knit guy. I kind of have that tight family atmosphere, and it breeds positivity here around at Hebron.
You know what? Our defensive coordinator is my position coach, safety coach, Coach Mock, and he actually took me to school every day last year during the season. So he's definitely someone I'm really close to, and we have a relationship that I would like to say is admirable in a sense. We build off of each other's plans. We work together along with the rest of the defense, and I believe that it helps us gel.
How big a deal is it for you? How proud are you of being a Hebron Hawk?
Very proud. I've moved around a lot, but I'm glad that I found a steady home here.
And last one, did you get a shout out to any of your family or your support system?
Shout out to my pops. Definitely helped me get here in a lot of ways, and go Hawks.
Thank you to Darius Snow for taking the time to chat with Kendrick for the Fast Forward Rewind Student Athlete Spotlight. So we're going to round things out as we continue previewing the upcoming batch of playoff baseball and softball games. We're going to quick hit some of the matchups that we hadn't yet had a chance to speak on. We're going to start rounding out things with softball. Prosper versus Hallsville.
Prosper is really good. They've been dominating. They've given up 1 run in 4 playoff games. Rachel Eckroat, their senior pitcher, she's been dominant. She didn't even give up that run. It was the bullpen that allowed that run. So I want to say the last time she gave up a run was against the Colony, maybe? And that was a long
Saturday game late in the season?
Yeah, and that was still a pretty long time ago. They outscored their opponents 30-something to 1. I don't have it in front of me, but that's pretty crazy so far in the playoffs. So I don't see Prosper losing. Don't know much about Hallsville, but I just don't see them losing this series.
Celina versus Crandall.
Crandall ranked in the top 5 in the state. This will be the toughest opponent Celina has played to date. I thought we were about to get a Celina-Argyle matchup in the 3rd round. That would have been fun, but Crandall's just too good. And this will be a tough one for Celina. Their 2 starting pitchers, Randy Dobbins and Michaela Galway, will have to be on their A games if they're going to want to pull off. I guess you want to call it an upset in this one.
Shift gears to baseball then, Justin. Marcus versus Belton. Go.
Marcus versus Belton. Game 1 Friday at Belton. Game 2. No. Game 1 7 Friday at Belton, and then it'll come back to Flower Mound Game 2 at 4 o'clock Saturday at Marcus, with Game 3 following if necessary. Belton pulled off a little upset, I guess you could say, in the first round. They beat a first place Cedar Hill team in 3 games to get here. They haven't made it past this round since 1992, however. Marcus, meanwhile, got to the regional semis last year and is coming off that doubleheader win on Saturday to beat Plano West and get back to the regional quarters, looking to get back to the regional quarters for the 2nd year in a row.
Sachse versus the Woodlands. Sachse's got a chance to make a little bit of history. This is going to be their, they've never been past the 2nd round. They were able to take care of at least getting to that area round by sweeping a series against Lake Highlands. But they draw a pretty hot team from the Woodlands. That entire district was hot. That entire district, 12-6A, swept 11-6A. So the Woodlands, despite being seeded 3rd, they were able to score a win, a pretty convincing win over number 15 state-ranked Rockwall. So they come in pretty hot to this matchup, and like I said, that's a strong baseball district. To Sachse's credit, though, they do come in. Their cleanup hitter Robert Hines was swinging a pretty hot bat against Lake Highlands. He went 4 of 8 and totaled 6 RBIs. So we'll see if they can get to the regional quarterfinals for the first time in program history. Justin, Coppell versus Montgomery, another hot team from 12-6A.
Yes, I was going to say another 12-6A representative. Montgomery finished 2nd in that district, and they're coming off a sweep of Tyler Lee in the bi-district round. Pretty traditionally strong baseball team. They made the 3rd round 4 years in a row from 2011 to 14, but looking to get back for the first time since then. Coppell is trying to get to the regional quarterfinals for the 3rd time in 4 years, coming off a run rule win over Naaman Forest in the 1st round in a 1-game series. So this one's going to be a home and home series. Game 1's going to be Friday in Coppell. Actually, kind of odd. It could be a home and home. The first 2 games are going to be in Coppell, and if it gets to a 3rd game, then Montgomery gets to host it on Saturday.
I don't think I've seen a series structured that way that I can recall.
Very odd. But I'm not sure how the flipping and everything work there. But yeah, game 1 and 2 will be at Coppell, and then if a 3rd game's necessary, they'll head down to Montgomery.
All right, over in 5A, Brian, Prosper versus Sulphur Springs.
Sulphur Springs stands in the way of a juicy 3rd round matchup with Wakeland, but you know they both have to get by 2 16-5A teams that are playing really well. Hallsville and Sulphur Springs. Hallsville finished 2nd in 16-5A. Sulphur Springs finished 3rd. Hallsville, they made it to the area round last year, so they're looking to advance to the 3rd round for the first time in a couple years. But you know, like I said, that 3rd round matchup, Wakeland and Prosper, I don't want to look too much ahead, but they squared off last year in the 3rd round. It was a great series. Wakeland swept them, but it was much closer than a sweep. So hopefully we get that matchup again.
Let's transition right then to Wakeland versus Hallsville.
What about them? No, Wakeland. I mean, the story all season about Wakeland. You know, they graduated their entire starting lineup, and they made it to the state semifinals last year, and here they are again. You know, powerhouse, ranked in the top 10 in the state. You know, a bunch of sophomores, you know, that no one knew heading into the season. Even a couple freshmen have been playing big innings for them. You know, here they are in the 2nd round, and they're the favorites again in this series, district champions. You know, I fully anticipate a Wakeland and Prosper matchup podcast next week.
All right, and let's round this out, Justin, with the Colony versus Texas High.
Yes, the Colony in the 2nd round for the first time ever off their big win in 3 games over Lone Star in the bi-district round. They take on a Texas High team from out in Texarkana. I've been getting all my info on Texas High from former Marcus football coach Jerry Stanford's Twitter feed, but Texas High made the regional quarters last in 2011, but have lost in the 1st round each of the last 4 years till they swept Lovejoy in the bi-district round this season. So this game is going to be 7:30 Friday, 1-game series at Paris Chisholm.
Alrighty, guys, that's going to just about do it. I appreciate y'all for checking this out. Justin, Brian, I pointed at the wrong person. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate y'all for tagging along with the podcast, folks. Enjoy the rest of your weeks, and we will talk to y'all later. Thanks again to our sponsors, Star Local Media, 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news.